Senator Cassidy.
Hey, man, Ambassador, thanks for hanging in there, man. Listen, if tariffs are on steel but not on the finished products, it greatly disadvantages our fabricators. There are folks in Korea who are doing finished product and taking it across the ocean and installing it in a major petrochemical plant in southwest Louisiana, depriving our fabricators of the business. My concern is if you do tariffs on the raw steel, well, and that has increased the price of inputs for our domestic fabricators, you further tilt it. Because now you've incentivized folks to build their finished product overseas, and you've increased the cost differential. Any thoughts on that?
We're, of course, aware of the problem of downstream effects, and that is always something you have to consider when you take any trade action. And your fundamental point is that you're generally better off putting tariffs and taking actions on finished products than you are.
Correct.
Is for sure true in my judgment. Having said that, you're in a position here where you have a specific problem and you have to figure out how you're going to deal with it. So I think what we have to do, the President has decided to take this action. I think we have to monitor what you're saying very closely and see if there is something that we should be doing in the meantime somehow to mitigate the problem with respect to specific circumstances. But your fundamental point is, and the President, by the way, completely agrees, your fundamental point is you're far better off taking action on finished products than you are on input products.
Now, what seemed to be a little bit of a disconnect there, you fundamentally agree, the President fundamentally agrees, but you're only monitoring as opposed to implementing. We can predict we are already losing projects to overseas fabricators because their cost of steel is significantly lower than ours, labor lower, et cetera. So let me just ask, if you fundamentally agree, why is there a hesitation in doing something about the finished product?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is you can't not, when you have a circumstance that you consider to be a national security issue on the 232, you can't not take that issue for that reason. But to the extent there are specific cases we ought to be looking at, I guess what I'm saying is I'm sympathetic, and I think we ought to be looking at them.
Now, secondly, and I don't know this, I'm asking, there is a fabricator in, I think, Montana, Wyoming, one of those states, who tells me that he bid on a project and lost to a South Korean company. The South Korean company bid $900,000 for this steel project for a replacement part for a refinery up there. But the transportation costs, according to a logistics company, would be at least $600,000. So the Korean company bid $900,000, won the bid, and you can look at that and imagine there's a subsidy of some sort because they would have had to have taken all their inputs and install it for $300,000 after you factor in the logistics. Are we doing anything about the subsidies that are accruing to folks perhaps in terms of transportation of these major pieces of a complex?
Well, I mean, I don't know about, of course, that specific case.
I understand.
But as a general matter, yes, this administration has been very aggressive on going after subsidies. Even I think people who view themselves as fundamentally free traders have to acknowledge that there's nothing fair about government subsidies. That just throws the whole thing in askew. It's more of a Department of Commerce issue, but we're happy to take the facts of your specific circumstance and go to the department and have them looking at it. You know, it's complicated where you bring a case, now you bring a case, and can you prove injury and the like. But directionally, you're completely right. It's a huge problem. And I've heard stories like this over the years from time to time, and they've always been bothersome. So to the extent you have a specific one, we'd like to look at it.
I heard earlier that it is actually Commerce who's responsible for giving the exemptions, but I will say, just so you can pass this along, that we're requiring small fabricators who make custom pieces to give a specification as to the thickness of the steel, the diameter of the pipe, et cetera, when this is a one-off. It is not something being stamped for a car door, of which you will do 1 million. It is something you're doing 50 of. And the means by which you obtain an exemption is somewhat onerous. Is it at all possible that we could allow the exemption to go to the vendor to sell their steel as opposed to the purchaser, who then has to justify their purchase by giving specs, which again are a one-off?
Yeah, I guess I just don't know the detail enough on that. I mean, what you're saying strikes me as reasonable, but I don't know exactly how it's set up. I'm happy to look into it if you like.
Okay, please. Okay, thank you. I yield back.